So here's what interest rates do then. Number one, they make sure that people do not begin long-term projects until society has saved enough resources to support them through. Until society has saved the material wherewithal necessary to complete all these long-term projects. And secondly, the interest rate coordinates people's time preferences, by which I simply mean some of us want to go out and blow all our money right away. Other people are more future-oriented. We want to throw it like misers. We want to throw everything in the bank. Well, these are different time preferences. Some people want to consume immediately. Some people want to consume in the future. Well, in the aggregate, society as a whole sometimes will find it wants to save now. Like right now, Americans are starting to save more in general. There are still some people blowing their money, but in general, we're seeing an increase in saving. So the interest rate also performs the function of, in effect, communicating to entrepreneurs, people are starting to save more now, which means they're delaying their consumption until some point in the future. Well, that's good. That's a good thing to be communicated to businessmen, because now businessmen know this is a good time to start a long-term project, because people are easing up on their consumption of consumption goods. So I can take some factors, put them toward long-term projects, and then when people are ready to spend once again, I'll have the stuff ready. So it coordinates time as well. So in other words, the interest rate plays an essential role, an absolutely essential coordinating role in the economy. Now what Hayek argued was this: if you interfere with the structure of interest rates as set on the free market, if you tamper with them, the result will be massive errors by businessmen and investors and consumers alike. Businessmen and investors are going to be investing in things that the economy would normally be telling them, we don't have the savings to support this. You shouldn't even start. It's a total waste even to start. High interest rates would be telling them, don't start these projects. Don't start all these different types of projects right now. The economy's saved resource base is not sufficient to complete them. So Hayek's point is that there are two different ways interest rates can come down: naturally and artificially. If they come down naturally, the economy functions smoothly. If they come down naturally, and by the way, how do they come down naturally? How do interest rates come down naturally? When you and I save more. When we save more, we put resources in the bank now has more to lend. How are they going to lend more? Well, they're going to have to make the terms of lending more attractive, so the interest rate comes down. They've got more to lend, so the price of lending comes down. So interest rates come down naturally when you and I save more. And when you and I save more, we are releasing the material wherewithal necessary to sustain society through lengthy projects. Well, when interest rates come down, that's when businesses start lengthy projects, because they're not so expensive. When the interest rate comes down and I've got a 10-year project, or a project that won't bear fruit for 10 years, that makes a huge difference. Anybody who has a 30-year mortgage knows what I mean. If your mortgage rate comes down by 0.2, if you have a 30-year mortgage, that could make a very significant impact on your monthly mortgage payment. So long-term projects tend to be interest rate sensitive. So at the very time that people are releasing resources for use in long-term projects, that's the very time that it makes the most economic sense for a businessman to engage in long-term projects. So the interest rate coordinates this. And secondly, businessmen engage in long-term projects at a time when we have all saved, meaning we are going to defer some of our consumption power until the future. Okay, they're producing for the future. So there's a coordinating function. I mean, it's almost miraculous, frankly, how the market economy works and how interest rates perform this coordinating function. Now, let's suppose you have something like the Federal Reserve System, a government-established monopoly central bank that has the monopoly power to create legal tender money out of thin air. The Federal Reserve System can influence interest rates, and they can push interest rates down, but artificially. It's because they just want them to go down, so they're going to go down. I mean, it's almost like saying, I'd like to fly, so I think I'll just jump off this cliff. I mean, the law of gravity is there. Like, you can't create prosperity just by forcing interest rates down. Otherwise, Bangladesh could just create a Federal Reserve, force interest rates down, and poverty would go away. So we know right off the bat there's something wrong with this. But let's suppose the Fed just forces interest rates down. Hayek's point is there are dramatic economic differences between a case when the interest rate has come down because of natural forces, increased saving in society, or from artificial means, namely the intervention into the economy of the government-established central bank. Because notice what happens in this case. If the central bank forces interest rates down, has the general public let up on its consumption? Has it released any resources to sustain workers and businesses through long-term projects? No. We haven't saved anything. We haven't done anything different. Just all of a sudden our central bank has told us the interest rate is going to target that we're aiming at is thus and so. Okay, but that doesn't mean we've released any resources. But businessmen, well, naturally, what are they going to do? They look at the interest rate, and it seems like now's the time to invest. But it turns out it isn't. Because in the beginning, it looks like everything's fine, but eventually, you come up against this resource problem. There aren't enough physical resources to support all these projects. So inevitably, a bust is going to come. Secondly, we haven't saved anything, remember. The interest rate has been forced down artificially. So also, this is not a case of people have decided they're going to consume less now, consume more in the future, so businessmen should be aiming toward the future. No, again, people's behavior hasn't changed at all, just the interest rate's been forced down by the crummy central bank. So, what does this mean? It means, again, businessmen think, well, okay, this is the time to invest for the future. But no, it isn't. People are demanding more of existing products right now, and businesses are misled into diverting resources into product development of new products way in the future. So it is a mismatch, a systematic mismatch introduced into the economy by the central bank's intervention. So you'll notice this is not the free market at work. The free market will get blamed for this because we're not allowed to mention the Fed. So all the negative consequences are naturally blamed on the free market. And in fact, even Henry Hazlitt, about 40 years ago, said that what's even worse than these busts, these crises that we endure, is the superstition that they are caused by capitalism. But so you understand why the bust has to come. In fact, Ludwig von Mises, the great Austrian economist of the 20th century, gives this wonderful analogy that I think really, really helps to explain what's going on here. He says, imagine that the economy is a single person. He's a master builder building a house, but he's under the false impression that he has 20% more bricks at his disposal than he really has. And let's say, for the sake of argument, he can't buy any more. These are all the bricks there are. So he's got a blueprint for a house he can't possibly complete. He doesn't have the physical resources to do it. Now, is it better for this master builder to discover his error sooner or later? Well, obviously, the sooner he discovers it, the sooner he can abandon this impossible project. The sooner he can go back to that blueprint and say, all right, I'm going to have to cross out the gazebo, I'm going to have to cross off this whole third floor, I'm going to have to do this and that, and then he can sort of salvage it. But if it's the last brick he puts on, he suddenly realizes, whoa, I guess I should have turned my head slightly to notice that there are no bricks left. If he's putting that last one on, look at the waste. All that waste of his time that he can never get back, those squandered labor resources, the bricks, and you're going to have to demolish this unfinishable building. So, in effect, Mises is saying that the whole economy is like this builder. It is on a trajectory that it is physically impossible for it to complete. So the sooner we realize this, the better. Now, whenever you hear that, oh, hey, we're in an economic crisis, so the Fed needs to pump more money in, the Fed needs to push interest rates even lower, that's the solution to the problem caused by lowering them in the first place, is to lower them even further. And now they're saying that we want to lower them to zero, and other people are saying zero is too high. Zero is too high as an interest rate. We need to get interest rates down to -5. That's not a joke, by the way. I wish it were. That's not a joke. But when people say that, the analogy to the home builder would be, it would be as if they said to the home builder, I think the way out of your situation is for you to just start using heroin. Because then that will just make you feel really good, and it'll make you, forget about your worries, and you can just continue building, and, you'll be happy. But does that make the bust, and by the way, don't use heroin. Does that make the bust any less inevitable? Just because you drug the guy up?